Eu me chamo Henrique Sampaio, eu sou jornalista de jogos há quase 15 anos. Sou editor e fundador do Overloader, que é um site que cobre jogos... É um site independente, né, que cobre jogos tanto AAA quanto independentes. A gente tem uma pegada mais de inclusão, de abordar questões sociais. A gente tem uma pegada de tratar videogame como um elemento da sociedade e não como uma bolha, né, uma coisa isolada. E justamente eu acho que por isso também eu recebi convite da Marina, aqui da organização do BIC, para fazer essa apresentação e apresentar o Mata Haggis-Burridge, que é professor da Universidade de Breda, de Ciências Aplicadas, na Holanda. E ele tem uma trajetória interessante, né? Que ele saiu da indústria AAA, ele desenvolveu jogos como Burnout Paradise, Alien vs Predador, e nos últimos anos ele, trabalhando de forma independente, desenvolveu Fragments of Him, que é um jogo que eu cobri no lançamento. Foi um jogo que me tocou profundamente, né? É um dos poucos jogos que a gente tem atualmente, ou na história dos videogames, em que você tem um personagem bissexual como protagonista, explorando a sexualidade dele, a história dele, no gameplay, na trama. E eu me vi muito, né, nesse personagem, eu me emocionei muito. Foi um jogo que me tocou bastante, e eu coloquei isso no meu texto, né? Recentemente eu mandei o meu texto para o Mata, ele disse que ele chorou, então eu fiquei meio... Ok, eu acho que o trabalho foi feito. E é muito interessante perceber que essa conexão foi feita muito por conta da interface, dos elementos, dos símbolos, e tudo isso ele vai aprofundar agora nessa palestra dele. Então, fico muito feliz de estar fazendo essa introdução. Depois, no fim da palestra, eu passo o microfone para vocês fazerem perguntas também. Então, eu vou deixar agora o Mata começar a palestra dele. Mata, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to be doing this in English, so because I don't speak Dutch well enough, and I don't speak Portuguese well enough. So if you're listening to all that, going, yeah, brilliant, it's great. Headphones on. Okay, right. Hello, everybody. Hi. Hi. I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for all of you coming to hear this talk. I want to thank all of the organisers of the big festival for running this whole event. And obviously I want to thank the Dutch consulate for paying for me to be here. So thank you. Hi, Dutch consulate person. Yeah, that's always appreciated. That's lovely. I also thank you, Riek, for the introduction there. Thank you to the translators at the background helping you do things. And this is the first time I've ever had sign language. This is awesome. I want to see this at every festival from now on. This is so good. This is awesome. I love it. Thank you. Very welcome. Thank you. Get more people doing this. This is great. So yeah, I'm Professor Mata Haggis-Burridge. I am a video game and narrative designer. I have been making games for a long time. I've worked in the AAA industry and indie games. I ran my own company for 7 years, making animations on web and TV and games. I worked on Burnout Paradise, which I'll be talking a bit more about today. Aliens vs. Predator, I became one of the campaign designers on that. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. More recently, I have been working for Breda University of Applied Sciences, formerly known as NHTV, or NHTV, to anybody who likes Dutch pronunciation, where I am the Professor of Creative and Entertainment Games. I help people understand the content, the creation, and the culture of video games. And that's kind of what I help people do and research. I'm also a business founder, so I run Copperstone C, which is a game design consultancy, and I write scripts for games. So even though I'm a professor, I'm actually still actively writing on games. I've written on 2 AAA titles in the last 7 months. So this is still actively part of what I do. And lots of other stuff. I'm part of the Writers Guild of Great Britain. I'm on the Creative Europe Media funding program as one of the judges, part of Society of Authors. Game Workers Unite. We need to unionize, people. We need to look after ourselves and get better working conditions. Support those things. These are good. augmented reality short films, experimental puzzle games, Fragments of Him, which was mentioned earlier, which I'll be talking a little bit more about today. I do a lot of things and stuff that I have NDAs for that I can't tell you about. But hey, follow me on Twitter or something, I don't know. So today I want to talk to you about making better choices, because better choices lead to better games. We're going to think about how we make our decisions here. I'm going to be talking about storytelling, I'm going to be talking about interface design, I'm going to be talking about reaching out to diverse audiences. These things might seem quite different. They seem like very different chunks of what we do as developers. Like kind of dinosaurs, unicorns, and lasers. They're all kind of cool and awesome, but do they work together? Well, yes, they do. They really, really do. So, I want to talk to you about kind of understanding how these things connect and how joining these things together makes you a more awesome developer. So about 12 and a half years ago, I started working at Criterion, which is part of Electronic Arts in Guildford in the UK, and I was working on Burnout Paradise. I placed thousands and thousands and thousands of objects in this world. I think it's about 10,000 objects I placed by hand. If you've ever hit anything that moved while you played... Actually, who's played Burnout Paradise? About 60% of the audience. Thank you very much for buying that. I get no money for you doing that, but Electronic Arts did very well out of it, so that was good. I assume you hit something that moved in that game. Bounced off your car. I put that there. I guarantee you I put that there. And I had this job. It was basically to create a realistic environment and a world that rewarded kind of this fun, kind of dangerous, exciting gameplay. So those are kind of the two things that I was asked to do within that. That traffic cone, I put that traffic cone there. That was my traffic cone. That's actually my favorite object in the entire game. I had very tight software constraints. There was only so many physics objects we could have moving around in the world at one time, and had an art team with very, very high standards. It was interesting. I only had 30 objects per half of the map. So there was like this tiny little range to create everything with. And within that, I created roadworks, dented streetlights, kind of picnic areas, and many, many more things. And as you drive around the city, it feels like there's stuff. It feels like all the people just walked off just a moment ago and put down their tools and did things. Because the world had to feel like a city. Because that's really, really important, making it feel like a city. But why? Why is it so important that it feels like a city? Well, to me, without this set dressing, without all these things, the city is just this. That's what the game is. You're a box sliding between other boxes. It's still a racing game. You're still doing the same thing mechanically, but it doesn't feel as good. That's what we were trying to do here. So, to me, story, in this case, really much narrative setting, but it's a part of story, it makes gameplay feel meaningful. And I'll talk a little bit more why there's an asterisk next to that in a second, but story and narrative setting makes gameplay feel meaningful. I mean, there's a reason that there's a game called Space Invaders, and that game isn't actually called colored blobs from the top of the screen. Being Space Invaders, though it's not really a story, it's enough of a setting to allow your players to have fun with that. You suddenly feel like you're defending the world, and that's important and meaningful, and that's something worth doing in a game. So that narrative setting, just that tiny little bit, was enough to make that game feel good. Likewise, driving a car through a realistic city is dangerous, it's fun, it's exciting. Adding all these little bits of set dressing in gave it that feel. Now, I did say there was an asterisk there, and arguably there are kind of pure puzzle games without the narrative setting. So I don't think it's 100% essential, but about 99% of games have some sort of narrative setting in there, and it's important. You're making a space game, well, suddenly you've got spacecraft and aliens. Well, that's enough narrative setting. I've heard studios say, no, we don't do narrative setting, and you're saving humans from invading hordes. Yeah, that's damn near political, you know? All games are political. All games have narrative. All of these things matter. So story isn't only about plot structure or script. And we've got many different stories tools we can use to tell stories. And I've got a very short thing here which will kind of help you, hopefully, as you go back to this. If you like taking photos of things, I will be showing this again at the end. Very briefly, I'll go through these. First one is dialogue and performance. Get a good writer involved. Writers do things with words that people who do not do stuff with words all the time, they do it very well. They word good. Professional writers are really powerful. Obviously, try to keep dialogue suitable to the game. Try to make it work. And get some good actors. Good actors are so useful. In terms of visuals, try and be consistent with the way that you create things, the social and cultural setting of this. And it is every single thing on screen. It's not just like the clothing people are wearing. It is the UI elements. It's the health bar or stars or scores, the fonts you choose. All of these things are part of storytelling. In terms of audio, audio is actually really, really cheap compared to almost everything else we do in games. And it's incredibly effective. So, you know, put details into your world. If there's a fan spinning, put a little sound on it that when you get close to it, it makes noises. I was playing some of the games out there, and they look great, and they really are. There's so much amazing stuff happening. But there was a game, and it didn't have any footsteps. I was walking through this area, and I was like, that would have been a bit nicer. And it's actually relatively cheap to do. And audio quality really, really improves your game. So really do invest time in that. Haptic. If you don't know the word haptic, it's things that you can feel, like rumble in a control pad. Used well, it can be really, really engaging. It can also be really annoying if it's used badly. So be a bit careful with how you do this. But it can be something like a nervous flutter of a heartbeat as somebody opens a door and they're scared and the pad goes, woo. It can be quite powerful. So be careful with how you use that. Choices. How you structure your story. Is it a linear story where there's only one path through it? Is there multiple paths that branch off into a ton of places? Or are there paths that go out, but they always end up here? And they go out, and they always end up here? These are different options that we have. How much can the player do? But be careful, the more branching you have, the more game you make that nobody sees. You know, if you've got 9 endings, every time somebody finishes with it, they've missed 8/9 of your work. That gets really expensive very quickly. So be careful how you do this stuff. Context. This one is a strange one. I try to describe it like this, that this chair makes perfect sense on this stage right here. If you saw this chair in a woodland, that would be really strange. Just sitting in a forest by itself, maybe a light next to it. That would be very strange. The context of where you put things creates meaning. And so the way that you put things into your game, the way you reuse them or don't reuse them, if there's a statue and you see it first time in Assassin's Creed Origins, which I'm playing at home at the moment, you see that statue and you go, oh my God, that's a beautiful statue. And you go to another city on the other side of the map, and that same statue is there, and you're like, I get it. You know, there's only so much we can do. But these are choices. You have the power to choose. You're a games developer. You have the power to choose how you use context, how you use repetition. So there's a few recommendations, like don't do fan service scripts. They're terrible. Avoid stereotypes and cliches. They drain the world of individuality, and sometimes they can be much more problematic, like racism or homophobia and things like that. So avoid that stuff. Try not to repeat the voice samples. Don't distract people with too much rumble and things like that. So I'm going to keep on going. Don't worry if you missed a photograph. I will show that thing at the end, after the end of the talk. So we have many ways to tell stories in games. But a few minutes ago, I said I was putting those objects in Burnout Paradise, and it was 2 things. One was the realistic environment, and the other one was a world that rewarded and encouraged this kind of fun driving experience. So how do we make those 2 things line up? Well, the world is the interface. That's all you've got. So, I mean, it is the interface between the player and the game's systems. There's this underlying logic of the physics of the cars and the driving and the racing and all the mathematics that makes a driving game work. All of your gameplay systems are hidden in code and data files, and the player doesn't get to touch them. And then there are three things. You've only got three things which you can use to communicate with your players. You've got the visuals, the graphics. You've got the audio, the sound effects, the music. And you've got haptic. And with those three things, that is your entire interface. Every single thing you do with those is interface design. And so use it damn well to get all of your systems out there. Because if you've got amazing systems and these three tools don't let you convey them to the player doesn't know that it exists. This whole world is interface design. The player has to be able to understand everything in your game just using those. So when I put the objects into Burnout Paradise, it wasn't only to tell a story, it was to encourage the most fun types of gameplay. And so I'm going to show you an example of this. So this is a typical scene in this game. We've obviously got our private property, keep out, and that's a shortcut. And, you know, as soon as you tell somebody in a video game it's private property and they should keep out, what we really mean is go in there immediately. It's going to be fun. That's an easy one. I won't even bother talking more about that. What I want to talk to you about is that little corner over there, that far one behind the car, this little corner here. So you can see traffic lights, you see a waste paper bin, you see like these railings, the pedestrian railings to stop people crossing in the wrong place. Very natural, normal things to be there. They're the stuff that you would see in every city. In an arcade racing game, though, we want people to drift around the city corners. We don't expect them to like carefully go up to the traffic lights, wait for it to go green, and then do a perfect 90-degree corner. This is not how you play Burnout. It's not the game we're making. We want people to smash through things and drift around corners. So we want to make that as fun as possible. So there are natural objects, but they go bang and crash and spark when you hit them and explode, and it's fun and it's noisy and it looks cool and it feels cool and it rumbles. It's exciting to play smashing through those natural things there. And actually, the better you play it, the more times you hit this kind of stuff, and the more fun and chaotic it feels. So racing through them feels dangerous and fun. So they are storytelling, but they're interface design too. They're telling you, when you play this right, when you hit all those things, you're having fun. You're doing this game correctly. It's a way of rewarding the player. So that's kind of telling them how to get the most out of this game. But of course, I had this third part that I was going to talk about in this. So I mentioned the storytelling and the interface design, but how does this link with reaching diverse audiences? Okay. So the thing is, around the world, you know, from Brazil to the Netherlands to Japan, South Africa, you know, people are basically the same. We want the same things. We want water, food, shelter, and love. That's what everybody wants. And if you can have those four things reliably in your life, without uncertainty whether they'll still be there tomorrow, your life is okay. And there's a lot of people in the world who don't live with those things reliably. But if you can get those and you can give them to people around you, that's a good way of living. But of course, we have some different cultural values. You know, sometimes we disagree about things. Our leaders may or may not reflect our personal values. I come from the UK, where we currently have Brexit going on. And I'm aware that different cultures and countries have their own issues that they might not agree with on their leadership. But the things video games are for everybody. Everybody plays these things. We have ways of talking about our culture and other people's cultures and trying to communicate what we believe in and what's important to us, hopefully with respect for others. Or we find the story of somebody else and we magnify it to the world so the whole world can go, oh, I understand what they mean now. That's powerful. That's a good thing that we can do. So stories and interfaces of our games, they really define how people will play, who will play them, why they might want to play them. These are the things that kind of shape our way into this experience. So I'm going to use some examples here about how the content of these games is really shaping who the audience might be. By the way, I'm not saying that anything is wrong in these choices these developers have made. I'm just highlighting that these choices exist in this content. They could have chosen different things. These are the things they went with. So Fight Night, round 3. You may have seen this game, I don't know. It's an EA Sports game. It's a boxing game played in first person. So obviously we have masculine player characters. This game may unintentionally, I suspect, and to some extent, not entirely, but it may exclude women. Possibly. You could take it from it. That was a choice. You know, that's fine. There's a lot of boxing fans who are men, so I get why they've chosen to do it this way, but it's a choice there nonetheless. You need quite fast reactions to be able to play this. So older players or people who have difficulty with coordination are going to be excluded from playing this. Okay, it's a choice. They could have made it more accessible, maybe. It's actually quite a nice interface. But it's got its own requirements. It's got its own difficulties, which will exclude some people. Okay. Photorealism. You know, they worked really hard to make sure every pore of sweat and every bead of perspiration is going to fly off when you smack a person in the face, and the face is going to deform out. And it's I don't want to punch people in the face. I don't find that very nice. It's not. I find that off-putting. I think some other players might not want to play it like that. Maybe they do. Maybe that's a big appeal for some people, but not for others. It's just a choice. There's no excuse me. There's no control hints on the screen here. So you have to be able to remember. You have to be good at learning what all the controls do, and if I do this with the sticks, what happens next? You have to be able to remember all of these things, which some people might find hard. Okay. Let's look at a different one. Super Punch-Out on the Super Nintendo. Does anybody play this one? Yeah, a few people. Good. About half the audience. Fantastic. So this is less realistic, which might be more appealing to a broad audience, perhaps. It's got a default male character again, and in this case they are white. They've got blonde hair and broad shoulders. It's a very specific version of a man. It's a very probably cisgender white man. Okay. There's no tutorial in this game. You're just expected to kind of read the instruction booklet or just work it out yourself. Some people find that uncomfortable and intimidating. Back then, Super Nintendo days, you were used to this. You would just press stuff until it did the thing. That's how we played things back then. But these days, we expect something more. It uses a lot of what I call the language of games. It has scores, it's got bonuses, it's got health bars, it's got timers. This is a language that probably everybody in this room is now used to, but there'll be a hell of a lot of people outside of this room who do not know this stuff. They see it, they know it, but what does it really mean? And that language of games can stop people from coming to play things for the first time. It can be distracting or intimidating. Do you want first-time players playing your game? If you do, what is the language of games, and how will you train them to understand it better? So who can play? Who will play this? Who's excluded from playing this? Might it be more appealing with a different design? Maybe it would. And this is where we kind of get to this thing where we look at stuff like this for inspiration, but we can look at this and go, how would you change it? What would you do differently if you were trying to make Super Punch-Out 2? Well, you'd have to get the license from Nintendo, but you know, if you were to make a game inspired by this, what would you do differently today? And that's kind of interesting. How would I change this? So this is another one. It's more recent. This is a game called Punch the Trump. It's a white avatar again, though possibly Latin American. I mean, it's got a different skin color from Donald Trump, but most people do. You've got quite hairy arms, so it's probably a masculine avatar. We can't say for sure. We never see our own face in this game, but again, it looks like we're playing as a man. There's a very clear political angle in this. There is a very definite sense of the politics. There is also Punch Hillary game out there by the same people. I never checked, actually, to see which one was played more. But there's a very clear political angle on this. Now, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm definitely not a fan of Donald Trump. But violence against real, living people does make me uncomfortable. I don't like this in my games. Like I say, I don't like the guy. I think he's a terrible human being, has done some terrible, awful things. But I don't want to play this. That's not cool in my head. You know, I didn't like it when it was Anita Sarkeesian. I still don't like it when it's Donald Trump. This is not okay to me. But it is to other people. If you want to be a developer making this, go for it. It's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you think about what you do. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to think and make choices, and intelligent, rational choices. Because better choices lead to better games. So the controls are explained, and there are icons to help you play this. It's actually very easy to play, very easy to pick up the first time. Again, quite fast reactions are expected, although it is quite easy to finish. It's very approachable. It's very like quick play kind of thing. So it's okay for that kind of thing. So that's 3 versions of boxing. All of them have got different audiences. They welcome some players in. They push other players away. These choices are shaping how people are making games and who's going to play them. And so you can see that the interface design, the storytelling within it, has actually shaped who the audience will be. So there's a lot about these things that's embedded into these games. And I suspect a lot of these choices really were made without any conscious thought. You know, they just went ahead and did it. It was fun. It worked. It made sense to them. That's fine. That's okay. But I think we can get inspired by questioning these choices and these assumptions. We can think more deeply about the kind of games we would make. Like, what happens if the avatar or the opponents are women? Is that good or bad? Because you kind of go, oh yeah, more gender equality, that's great. But then you're making a game which is about punching women in the face, and yeah, that's more troubling. Or is it? If we're representing professional sportswomen equally to men, that's kind of cool. Make it your choice. What would we change to make this game more approachable to people with disabilities? How would you alter the control schemes? How would we alter people for cognitive impairments or physical impairments? How would we make more people able to play this? Should we add skin color diversity within this? Different costumes? Political or religious symbols? You could. I don't think it would be a very good idea to put religious symbols in this kind of game. I don't think that would be a very good idea at all, but you could. It would certainly make a difference to your audience. And that's what I mean here. These choices make a difference to your audience. This is just interface design. This is set dressing. This is dressing up a box, sliding between boxes as Burnout Paradise. This could be turning it into a boxing game into something very, very different. And many, many more choices we could do here. So these questions, they really kind of challenge you to think about your story and interface design. And I think perhaps they do help you reach new audiences. So could you make a first-person boxing game for a blind player? I just thought, as a thought experiment, what would I do? Well, I'd probably need really good audio. I think that would be really, really very, very important here. I'd spend a lot of time making that work. I'd probably need a good rumble in the controllers, nice bit of feedback to feel like people are making contact. How about making it for 2 people? Like some sort of asymmetric co-op. I could have one person seeing and the other person only hearing. And actually, already, just trying to think about how that audience would play, it actually sounds quite interesting, not only for the target audience, but for other people as well. And so by thinking about a specific audience, I might have found something new for everybody else, which maybe gives a little bit of insight into some of the experiences over here. Not saying it's a perfect idea, but it's interesting. And hopefully you can see how by thinking, if somebody else wanted to play this, how would I welcome them in? Can actually inspire you to make something different. So I think by thinking about diverse audiences, we can actually find new games for everyone. We find new gameplay verbs and new ways of designing our interfaces that actually make everybody have more fun. That's kind of cool. So I think diversity is really about opening ourselves and seeing the world of others. I think we enrich everybody's lives through this respectful exchange and inspiration. We can learn about each other. We can hopefully be better human beings as well as playing great games. And yes, it is about inclusion of different genders, sexualities, races. I think this stuff is incredibly important. But it's also about religion, class, age, education, physical, mental health, urban living versus rural, and many more things. You know, if you try to play Pokemon in the middle of the countryside in America, you'll have a very different experience of Pokemon if you're playing it, I mean Pokemon Go, sorry, than if you're playing it in San Francisco. You know, just the ability for people to play this rural versus urban thing. When we play kind of geotagging kind of games, this makes a huge difference. When we think about audiences like this, we begin to put in all these different aspects of diversity into our thinking. It makes us question the games we have and be inspired about the games we can make. So finding ways to appeal to others, I think, can really inspire us in our own work. And of course, your story and your interface, it invites more or less people to play. Your interface is that welcome sign to your game's story and systems. And some signs are going to be more inclusive than others. You know, how do we welcome more people in? How do I make sure the audience in Brazil feels welcome when I don't speak any Portuguese? Well, I have a few words. Obrigado. Yay. So, as was mentioned earlier, I made Fragments of Him. It's my most recent game that I can talk about, at least. And there was a very conscious choice on these three aspects. It's a story about a young man who dies in an accident and how his friends and family come to terms with that loss. It's a very personal story to me. It's a drama about an everyday story. It's about a bisexual man and his gay partner, an ex-girlfriend, a grandmother. It's about their lives. It's as real as I could possibly make it. Many of the events, the conversations, these incidents, the objects are all taken from my life. It's focused very, very much on love, not competition. It's not about timers and high scores and things. I was at I'll just say a major mobile games convention showing this, and somebody came up to me going, "Have you thought about putting scoreboards in your games? Like high scoreboards, like a leaderboard?" Like, no, that's not the kind of game I'm making. It is about love and how it changes us and the power of it, and that even being in love briefly can affect the rest of your life. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be in love. And I wanted to be able to talk to as many people as possible, so I made it very, very simple to play. All you do is you walk around and you click on stuff that's highlighted. Is it perfectly designed? No. 2.5 people made it. There's only so much you can do, but I am incredibly proud of what we put together. I'm very, very happy with this. This is the first game that I've made that my parents have been able to play and complete. You know, they're 70. I think that's awesome. And I did that on purpose. I deliberately was thinking, what kind of game could I make that my parents' generation would be able to play? And that's a lot of the things behind the design decisions here. Here's a quick taste of it. Here's what it looks like.
It's funny, the things that you remember. A mix of small things, making up a lifetime.
It felt like we were the only people in the world.
How are we supposed to go on? People talk about getting closure, but his story was only half written.
I've let myself lose track of what I want after everything we've been through.
So yeah, that was what we made. Supported by lots of nice Dutch industries as well. So by making this game incredibly simple to play, I think we brought in new players, and we lost a few others. That was okay. Now, I like this kind of thing on Metacritic. A beautiful, smart, mature, and emotionally deep experiment in interactive narration. If you're looking for traditional gameplay, though, stay as far away as possible from it. I agree. That's fine. It's okay. I knew that was going to be the response. I expected that. And we've got more people playing. We had people who were playing this with partners who've never shared a game with their partner before. People who can play things together for the first time and playing a game about love together and how much it means to each other. That was really, really powerful for them and for me. You know, I've got to share a part of myself with thousands and thousands of people. That's such a good feeling. It was a deliberate choice, you know? So when we create games, the story and the interface are the key parts in deciding who will be our players, who can be our players. These things shape the audience. We must make these choices deliberately. I think when we accidentally do this, we can end up we sort of exclude a bit of an audience here and pull them in over there, and then we exclude them over here, and we just end up making choices about systems without a coherent overall value that we're trying to extol. And I think that's kind of what I want you to think about here, is how all of these things tie together to be one vision of your game. You need to have that coherent vision. Who am I making this for? Who will they play it? Why will they play it? What are they trying to get from this? What am I trying to give to them? Think of your game as a gift. This is something from yourself you are giving to them. If we rely on only intuition, we typically end up making games only for ourselves and people like ourselves. So something I noticed when I was, yesterday morning when I was queuing, I went into the business queue and we had all the attendees coming in. And on the business queue, it was almost entirely men. And on the attendees queue, it was pretty much 50-50, and other genders, actually, so it's not 50-50, that would be more. 49-49 too, which actually is about statistically correct. And so I saw that in the audience, there were more people, more lives out there than is typically reflected in the average game studio. And I want that audience to be having their stories in these games. I want them to see themselves in our games. I want them to be employed next to me in a studio somewhere making games. I want their visions to come through. I want to see more people's stories in our games. There is a world of players out there waiting for their perfect game, and you could be the person who makes it for them. And that will feel so good. So drive your creativity. Look for different stories you haven't played before, like Firewatch. That's a great game with a powerful story, a really interesting experience. Or Her Story. Her Story is amazing. It's just such an interesting way of driving this kind of thing. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. It's deeply embedded in a very English thing that I don't think I've seen done like that in a video game ever before. I call it the Archers Apocalypse. The Archers is a very old-fashioned radio show that's been going on for decades in the UK. It's about all these farming communities, and then they did the apocalypse in it for a video game. It's a bit strange. I'm looking forward to this one as well. 12 minutes. Did you see this from E3? This looks cool. It's a game that, you know, who here has thought about doing a time loop game at some point? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I figured I wouldn't be the only one. Who's actually made a time loop game? Yeah, because they're really hard. So, you know, I think it's really interesting to see what they're doing with this and how they've taken that idea that a lot of us have had and are making it something cool. So is this a conclusion? I don't know. Because I think we're working at the beginning of a new art form. Unquestionably, this is a new medium for creativity, potentially the last art form that will ever be invented. I might regret saying that, but it could be the last one. And I think this allows to create journeys for like space captains and rice farmers and living jelly monsters or unicorn dinosaur lasers. You know, we can do anything with these games. The interface design, the story choices, they define who will be able to play and who will desire to play our games. If you reach a new audience, your game can spread around the world. I mean, that's basically why I was invited here today. Fragments of Him has made people all over the world can go, oh, that's a story I've never seen before. I'd like to hear what Matta thinks. Well, that was nice. Thank you. You know, that's good. I like that. So, but choose wisely, because everything in your game is connected. I hope that beginning point, whereas like how the hell do these things connect, makes more sense now. I think you see that through line. Think carefully. Be inspired by diverse audiences. What will they want to play? Whose story have they never experienced before? Who's played a game with a rice farmer as the protagonist? I have. One other person. What was your one? Do you remember the name of it?
Then I was like, okay.
So there's a game. There is a game out there. There's a game called Yellow River on the BBC Micro, which was in loads of school children's things in the 1980s in the UK. I don't think I've ever played another game about a rice farmer, and I can guarantee you there are more rice farmers out there than there are starship captains. And I've played as a lot of starship captains. That feels like something is wrong there. That seems like there's something to be done about that. So go create something amazing for these audiences. Embrace the challenge. What is Rice Farming Sim 2019? Professional edition. What is that game? How would you make that? What would you do with it? I think that's so interesting to think about. And whether you make it or not, I'd like to see you try. And you might make something amazing. So let's welcome everybody into this amazing world of video games. We could get inspired by this and make things with passion, with love, that make us happy, which make audiences happy, which make people feel validated and seen in the world. That's the power of what games can be. I think this is an incredible art form what we've got, an incredible opportunity we have now. So please, let's embrace this stuff. And finally, I hope this talk has inspired you. And of course, there is one last thank you left to do, which is thank you all very much for listening. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I promised you slides. So I promised you that one. So if you like taking photos of these things, there's that one. Thank you so much for the signing. I hope I didn't go too fast. If you are, has everybody got that one? Yeah. Anybody not got that one? Okay. I've also got another one which I did from GDC. There's a GDC talk I've got on YouTube, which is about this one. If you like these kind of things. That's like twice as many cameras just came up there. Okay. People really like this stuff. Yeah, so I've got 2 talks from GDC on YouTube, and there's another one which is really a deep dive into how we made Fragments of Him, which is on GDC Vault. for some reason, they never put that one on YouTube. But if you like this kind of stuff and like storytelling talks, look up the GDC Vault one. It's one of my favorite talks I've given. Cool. I'm going to leave that up there for a minute longer because people are trying to focus because it's really tiny print. And I did that in half an hour, that talk. That's crazy. Don't try to do that much. Cool. While people are taking photos, I think we're done there, aren't we? Yeah, we're good. We're good. Okay. Cool.
A gente pode... we could try some questions, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody got questions?
Alguém tem perguntas?
There's a few. Okay.
Hi. First of all, thanks for your talk.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
My name is Julia, and I was wondering, in this place where we've been talking a lot about including people of, well, just being diverse, both in the narratives and in the audiences, how can we go about it without being diverse for the sake of being diverse? You know, for example, Assassin's Creed Origins, I'm loving it, but there is absolutely no difference whether you play as a woman or a man. They just put it in there because people are like, oh, make a main woman character.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the question. So how do you avoid tokenism in essence? So there's something that, well, for a start, I think you have to be driven by that choice, rather than kind of going, oh, let's just flip that, which can be fine. It can be fine to just suddenly flip a character from a woman to a man or a man to a woman. That, for example, that can be fine. And actually, you know, they did that in the first Metroid in some ways. In the first Tomb Raider, the very first version of Tomb Raider was a man, and they just went, oh, let's try and make it a woman for a while. See how that feels. So it can just work. But I think it's nice to be driven by that identity in the choices that you make. There's something within the writing world that we think about a lot. So when you're writing a novel or a TV show or anything like that, quite often you get a series of events that you kind of want to tell a story about. So there's like something that goes wrong and somebody has to fix it. And the most important question, before you go on to all the rest of the plot, is who is the most interesting person this could possibly happen to? Who is the most exciting, challenged, difficult, problematic, brilliant, terrible person that this thing could happen to? Who would make the most interesting story? Now, sometimes your answer will be a stubbly, white, cisgender man. And that's fine. If that's the most interesting person for that to happen to, hell yeah, go for it. But I kind of guarantee you that it probably won't be. And that's it. That's just it. Find the most interesting person that could possibly be in your story and put them in there. And then it's no longer tokenism. It's thinking about who would be the best, most interesting, exciting experience. What would be the person that players will go, oh, they have to get through that? That's fantastic. You don't want to be playing as the space captain sometimes. You want to kill the entire crew, and the person who mops the floor in the spaceship is suddenly the space captain. That's a hell of a lot more exciting. And is the space person mopping the floor going to look like the space captain? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Will they have had the same class upbringing? Will they have the same education? Probably not. And so suddenly you've got a much more interesting experience. And so you've included diversity by nature, just by finding the most powerful person for that story. Does that answer your question? Cool. We had lots of other questions.
Here.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. I liked it a lot. It was very inspiring. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
That's okay.
I wish to work with script. So I wanted to ask if you have any other advice, because I learned a lot about telling stories. But in a matter of script, if you have any advice, any hints, because, you know, I really don't have any basis. So I wanted to know if you have anything to, like,
yeah.
I don't know if I can...
Advice for writing scripts.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the first piece of advice that always needs to give to people when they're writing is write a lot. Just keep on writing. Try and do it every day if possible, because it is a craft. It's like drawing, it's like painting. You don't pick up a pencil the first time in your life and kind of going, Leonardo da Vinci. It's not that easy. And some people, yes, they will be slightly more naturally inclined to be good writers, perhaps. But a lot of it is just practice. There are things that you can do to improve stuff. Some of it will actually come down to who your characters are. So it's actually not a problem in so much the voice. It's like, who are they? Because if you've got a person who is driven by an emotional need, as well as a physical need. A lot of time in games, we're very good at saying the person needs to defeat the evil lord to save the kingdom or whatever. And we don't think, why them? What is it to them? What is that evil lord to their life? Why are they saving the kingdom and not somebody else? Why isn't she doing it? Or why isn't he doing it? Or why aren't they doing it? If you can work out what's driving that person inside, when you write the words coming out of their mouth, you know who they are up here. And so it's easier to say what's coming out of here. That's, that helps. Getting inside their head helps a lot. So think about who it is first and really try and imagine that. I sometimes, if I've got a main character in a game, I'll write about 3 or 4 pages of background about them. So I know what the grandparents' jobs were of everybody in Fragments of Him. I know a childhood memory of all of those characters. I know their relationships. I know what books they read. I know whether they used Android or Apple phones. Never shown in the video game, but it helped me know who they were. And knowing those people can really drive your choices in these kind of things. I do also have a whole talk at GDC about writing better. So look that one up on YouTube. But in that one, it's about writing less. Because often we are very kind of driven to kind of go, oh yes, I hope I get to the top of the mountain, because if I don't do that before the next day, then my love will be frozen in stone forever. When you could just write, oh, that's bigger than I thought. I've got to do it. And with about 7 words, you've changed 50 and actually have written a better line of script. So sometimes saying less or sometimes saying nothing at all can be more powerful than writing more. And there is a GDC talk about this on YouTube with a few different methods of doing that. Cool. Do we have time for one more?
Unfortunately not.
We do not. If you want to come and ask me questions, I'll go stand somewhere or something. You can ask me afterwards. So I think we're done then, aren't we, really?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for your questions as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're awesome. Thank you, translators at the back. Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant.